The wind at my father's burial cut through my coat, and my brother used the cold as cover. He grabbed my elbow, marched me off the property, and told the mourners I'd been begging at the funeral. I didn't resist. What none of them knew, not my brother Daniel, not his wife, not the lawyer already dividing the company, was that the battered sewing chest they handed me to get rid of me would summon a black car up that gravel drive, and the man who stepped out would hold up a single sheet of paper and speak one word that emptied the room. Chairwoman, welcome back to Tranquil Drama Stories. If a story ever makes you feel less alone, that's the point. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from, and subscribe so the next one finds you. My name is Lena Whitfield, and I drove to my father's funeral with machine oil still on my hands. I'd been up since 4 finishing a coat. Grief doesn't stop the orders, it just makes you slower. The Whitfield estate sits 40 minutes north of my shop. When I arrived, German sedans and a hired valet told me everything. The burial had been arranged like a shareholders' meeting with a casket in the middle. I parked my old truck at the far end and walked up alone. People I hadn't seen in years looked at me, then away. My sister-in-law Patricia Eyre kissed beside my cheek. Her eyes dropped to my calloused, scarred hands, and her face closed. You could have gotten a manicure for your father, she said, steering me to the back rows where the failures were expected to sit quietly. You have to understand what it meant to be the Whitfield who worked with her hands. My father measured people by what they produced in numbers. Daniel produced contracts. I produced buttonholes. That math was settled before I could talk. At 9, I showed him a hem I'd fixed on his work coat. He turned it inside out and said, "Every company needs one person who knows how to mend what the others break." I carried that sentence for 27 years, as an insult. The mender. The one you keep in the back. After my mother died when I was 12, the house grew quiet and the ledger loud. Daniel went to business school. I went to the workroom because a straight seam never told me I was a disappointment. By 21, I'd opened my own shop. My father never visited, or so I believed. Now he was in the ground. I was in the back row. And that sentence was all I had. Daniel ran the funeral like a man closing a deal he'd already won, accepting condolences that sounded like congratulations. Regional buyers sat near the front, actual mourners toward the back. He put his hand on the casket for a hired photographer. This wasn't the end of our father. It was the beginning of Daniel. He caught me watching, and for a second I saw the boy who used to sneak me cookies. Then his mouth tightened. Not here, not you, not today. Near the tent, the family lawyer arrived early with a leather folder. When Daniel saw him, he smiled a real, hungry smile. Whatever was in that folder, everyone but me seemed to know what it said. Waiting for the will, my mind drifted to a memory. 2 years ago, a hard old man had come into my shop cane he didn't need. Voice like a rasp. He demanded a coat made the old way, questioned every stitch, made me redo a shoulder twice, paid cash, left no name and never returned. Something about how he'd looked at my hands not with contempt but a strange sharp attention surfaced now. I told myself it was grief. I was wrong. That customer was the first thread of the whole thing, and I'd held it 2 years before I understood. The will was read in the front parlor under a portrait that made my father look kind. Daniel sat in the center chair like a throne. Patricia beside him with a legal pad. I stood in the doorway. No one offered me a seat. The lawyer read flat and fast. The house, the accounts, the controlling interest in Whitfield Garments, all flowed to my brother. My name didn't surface for a long time. When it did, the lawyer paused. To my daughter Lena Whitfield, I leave the contents of my sewing chest. That was it. A cousin laughed. Patricia's pen stopped. Daniel looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. Relief. The math had come out right. The mender got the thread. Well, he said, at least Dad kept his sense of humor. People laughed. I thought, a sewing chest. A box of old thread. I had no idea they'd just watched my father hand me everything and mistaken it for a joke. A young cousin brought the chest scarred oak, brass latch green, and set it on the table. It smelled of beeswax, machine oil, cedar. I didn't open it there. Not with them watching. Patricia appeared. Take that today. We need to clear the clutter. Clutter. As I turned, The lid shifted and I saw the corner of heavy yellowed paper tucked against the felt. I almost stopped, but Daniel was watching. I carried my inheritance toward the door, telling myself I'd open it at home. 4 steps later, Daniel's voice carried. "Lena." He crossed to me, lowered his voice. "You're not going to make a thing of this." "Make a thing of what?" "The will. The box. I won't have you moping like you were cheated. I'm carrying a box to my truck. You're carrying a look on your face." He said it like the look was the crime. In that world, feelings were an accusation. I said, "I'll be gone in 5 minutes," and turned. That should have been the end. But my brother had forgotten how to stop. He closed his hand around my elbow. In front of the buyers, he steered me toward the doors like a problem. I could have fought "you don't press wool for 20 years with soft arms," but I saw the phones that weren't quite raised. If I fought, hysterical. If I cried, pathetic. Composed was all I had. So I let him. As we passed the important people, he said it loud and warm, "I'm so sorry." She was practically begging at Dad's funeral. It's been hard on her. Begging. I'd taken a box and tried to leave quietly. But the word landed like a verdict. I watched people arrange their faces in sympathy for him. He walked me all the way to the gate, let go of my arm on the public side, and went back without a word, brushing his palm like he'd touched something staining. I was alone on the road with the chest, watching my family through iron bars. Somebody laughed. That's what undoes you, not the cruelty, but the ease. I set the chest on the road, hands on the lid, breathing. I would open the envelope at home. I had my keys in my hand when I heard it, the low hum of a car that didn't belong. Tires on gravel. A black sedan, older, costly because it didn't try, stopped near me. A man got out, 70, gray coat, and looked at me like he'd been driving a long way. Lena Whitfield. Behind me, the funeral continued. He glanced up the drive at the tent, the buyers, my brother, and his face went cold. Then he drew out a single sheet of heavy cream paper. He didn't raise his voice. He held it up, looked past me at the house, and said one word. "Chairwoman." I didn't understand. A stranger had handed me a word, and I thought grief had cracked me open. "Who are you?" "Arthur Cole. Your father and I built this company 40 years ago. This is a stock certificate, founders' voting shares. He signed them into your name 2 years ago and asked me to hold them until today, after you'd seen how they'd treat you when they thought you had nothing." I looked at the signature, the same hand that had signed my report cards. The day tilted. "The sewing chest," I said. "He put it there on purpose," Arthur said. "He knew you'd be the only one who'd open a box of old thread." Behind the gate, my brother laughed, and the wind stopped mattering. Arthur drove me to the corporate offices. Inside, when I walked through the lobby with the chest, a young woman at the front desk half rose and said, "Can I help you, ma'am?" "Ma'am." I hadn't been called that in this building. In the boardroom, I set the chest on the walnut table. Arthur laid the certificate beside it. "Before your brother finds out, understand what you're holding. It isn't money. He could fight money. This is control." The company lawyer, Helen, arrived and spread documents. "Your father structured the company with 2 stock classes. Common stock, that's your brother's inheritance. The equity, dividends, paper value, and founders' voting shares. Very few. They don't pay much, but whoever holds them controls the board. It's not 51% of the money. It's 51% of the votes." I stared. "So Daniel owns the value but never controlled it. Your father made sure of that 2 years ago." Right then, the boardroom door swung open. Daniel stood there, tie loosened, and looked at me at the head of the table. He laughed, genuinely baffled. "What is this?" "This is my boardroom as of this morning." "As of this morning," Helen said quietly. "It's hers." Daniel's eyes went to the certificate, to the signature, hunting for the loophole. Helen slid him the second document. Transferred, signed, witnessed 2 years ago. "It's clean." He read it twice. I saw the moment he understood his performance finally cost more than he had. His hand pressed flat on the table. "Dad wouldn't." "He knew," Arthur said. Daniel looked at me. Really looked, trying to match the sister he'd walked to a gate with the woman in this chair. "I'm calling my lawyer," he said, and left. I already knew what his lawyer would tell him. Patricia arrived 40 minutes later, warm and arms out. "Lena, what a day. Whatever you decide, we're behind you." She put her manicured hand over my calloused one. An hour ago I'd been clutter, now I was family. They didn't hate me. They didn't love me. They simply read the room by who was holding what. Underneath her words, a cold question opened. What did I want? I asked Arthur to show me the workroom. The moment I walked in rows of machines, the smell of pressed wool, something loosened in my chest. An older woman was hand-finishing a jacket. A felled seam so beautiful almost no one under 50 could do it. "That's a lovely seam," I said. She looked up. "Edith." She saw my hands. "You've done this 20 years. She smiled, then her face grew careful. "Since your brother took over, we're cutting corners the old man never would have allowed. Machine fusing instead of hand padding. He says the customer can't tell, but they always can. That's the whole trade." She peered at me. "Do I know your work?" "I swear I know this hand." I didn't have time to answer. Arthur needed me upstairs, but I filed it away. In my father's old office, Arthur sat me down. He was hardest on the people he was most afraid of failing. "And Lena, he was terrified of you." I said that couldn't be true. "There's something he wanted me to give you, but not tonight. You're not ready." I drove home with a certificate and a letter I wasn't allowed to read yet. Unable to sleep, I opened the chest for the tools. His thimbles, his shears, spools of thread in colors they don't make anymore. Down the side, wedged against the felt, a small bundle in muslin. Inside, waxed thread for buttonholes that last a lifetime. And a scrap of cloth herringbone wool. Charcoal. A hand-set shoulder seam. I knew that seam. I'd bought that bolt 4 years ago. I turned the swatch over. In the corner, my father's cramped pencil. A date 2 years ago. The exact week the rude old man had questioned every stitch I made. I sat down. The shape of it rose like a body out of deep water. That customer was my father. He'd driven 40 minutes to my shop, sat in my chair, let me measure him, made me redo a shoulder twice to watch my hand solve the problem. He'd tested me in secret to see if the daughter he'd written off could do the thing he'd built his life on. I'd passed. He'd kept this swatch and then signed the company into my name. He'd seen me once, in disguise, too much of a coward to say it with his own name. But he'd seen me. At 3 a.m, holding that scrap. I didn't cry. And then I did. By morning, grief had edges. He'd known for 2 years and said nothing. I was furious and grateful at once. And underneath both, the cold question, what did I want? I had the say. A part of me wanted to use it, ugly and pointed straight at Daniel. He didn't waste time. By week's end, he'd called buyers and suppliers, wondering aloud if the company was in steady hands. My sister does alterations out of a little shop. Sweet work, but running a company this size, he let them finish. A slow fog of doubt. I started drafting a numbers-heavy response, talking like him, and stopped. I asked a better question, not how to beat him, but what am I here to protect? I called the floor managers. They filed in wary. A manager named Marcus tested me. You've run a shop. This is 200 people. What can you tell us? I asked him to bring me a finished jacket. He set it on the table, smirking. I turned it inside out and ran my thumb down the interior. This canvas is fused, glued, not hand-padded. It'll bubble by the 4th dry clean. Your customer won't know why, he'll just blame the label. Who signed off on fusing? Marcus wasn't smirking. You felt that in 10 seconds. I've been feeling it since I was 9. It's the one thing I know. The room shifted. I'd told them a true thing their boss's brother had been hiding. Marcus nodded. The old man used to do that. Turn things inside out. I know. He taught me. The next morning, Daniel came to the boardroom alone. Reasonable. You made your point. Let's be practical. Keep the shares. Keep the title. Let me run operations. You take a chairman's distribution off the top, real money every quarter for signing where Helen tells you. Go back to your shop. I wanted it. I was tired in a way that went back 30 years. I opened my mouth to say yes, and thought of Edith hand finishing a seam my brother had decided the customer couldn't tell the difference on. The yes died. I need to think about it. That night in my dark shop, I looked at what I'd almost done. The offer gave me distance, quiet, money. All I had to do was hand him Edith, hand him 200 people to a man who thought their craft was a cost. My father hadn't left me the say to sell it back. He trusted me to protect the people who make things with their hands. If I took the deal, I'd be seeing Edith as clutter. I called Arthur at dawn. I'm not taking his offer. I'm staying. Good, now he's going to stop being polite. Daniel terminated my supply contract overnight, citing conflict of interest. My cloth costs jumped. 2 holiday commissions had nowhere to be finished. When I tried to open my own account, the millman was apologetic he'd already been called. My brother couldn't touch my shares, so he put his thumb on my living. That night, the ugly thing inside me spoke. You have the votes. End him. I opened my laptop and drafted the resolution. I typed. He physically removed the majority shareholder from a private event and publicly characterized her as begging. True, devastating. My finger hovered over save, and it felt like justice. What stopped me wasn't mercy. Earlier, I'd watched Edith with a new apprentice, Jake, 19, ruining a seam. She'd taken the ripper from his shaking hands, undone his mess, and started him again, her hands over his. Everybody breaks the first 10. The trade's whether you sit back down. You can tell everything about a person by how they treat the one still learning, not the one who can hurt them back, the one who can't. I took my thumb off the button. If I destroyed my brother because I could, I'd be becoming him. Every company needs one person who knows how to mend what the others break. The sentence turned over. I closed the laptop, but that didn't lower my cloth costs. The next morning, Patricia showed up at my shop, lost and exhausted. He doesn't know I'm here. We're in debt, the house leveraged twice. Everything depended on Daniel inheriting the cash flow. Oliver's school called. We're behind. He keeps asking if he did something wrong. Daniel's been trying to be enough for a dead man since he was 10. She left a drawing Oliver had done at the funeral. A stick figure factory labeled, Where Daddy Works. It sat on my counter for 2 days. A 9-year-old already knew the family's worth ran through that building. He'd learn the rest unless someone changed it. The question turned, what am I here to do? I couldn't leave Daniel cutting corners, teaching his son that craft was a cost. He had to come out not destroyed. Out for the work, and for Oliver. I called Helen to restructure. She said it could be done. Then she said the sentence that knocked the ground out from under me. To restructure cleanly, we'd close the old textile floor. It's been running at a loss. Your father kept it open out of loyalty. That's the first thing any board would cut. I'll pull the personnel list. The list came. 120 people, most older, decades in the trade. 4th from the top, Edith. To remove my brother cleanly, I would put Edith out of work. The clean win had a body count, and the bodies were the people I was supposed to protect. I sat with that list for a day and a night. Every angle closed on me. The old reflex rose. Solve it alone. Don't lean. I nearly called Helen to sell the shares back. Then I understood isolation wasn't strength. It was just the most dignified way to give up. My father had Arthur, so I called the one person who'd known him longest. Arthur met me that evening. I spread the impossible choice in front of him. He listened, then took an envelope from his coat, old, cream, my name in my father's hand. It's time. He wrote this when he signed the shares. He said to give it to you when you stopped trying to win and started trying to figure out what was right. You're there now. Before you hear that letter, please hit like and subscribe to Tranquil Drama Stories so the next one finds you. Stay close, we're almost there. I opened the envelope. Lena, by the time you read this, you'll be angry I waited. You have a right to be. I measured you against your brother with a ruler I never questioned. I taught you the one who builds is worth more than the one who mends. And I was wrong. It took watching your hands in your shop to see it. Daniel measures people the way I taught him, and it's made him miserable. I'm not leaving you a company Daniel can have the money. I'm leaving you the say because you're the only one who might set the ruler down. Don't punish your brother, he's been punished by the same thing. Fix the ruler. Mend what the rest of us broke. I read it 3 times. The mender, I finally understood he'd been telling me what I was for. I'd used the ruler too, all my life, deciding I wasn't worth a chair and calling it humility. Fixing the ruler didn't start with Daniel. It started with me. A third road opened. I could keep the plant open, keep Edith, remove Daniel from operations without putting anyone on the street if I stopped thinking like a Whitfield closing a deal and started thinking like a person who mends. I called Helen to schedule a full board meeting. I invited the floor, Edith, Marcus, 2 pressers, Jake. I wanted the people whose lives would be decided sitting in that room. Friday, down one side of the walnut table. Directors, Daniel, Patricia, down the other. Edith, Marcus, the pressers. Jake in an ill-fitting tie. In the middle, I placed the sewing chest. Daniel stared at it like a live animal. Helen read the resolutions. I stood. 2 weeks ago, most of you watched my brother walk me off our father's property and call me a beggar. What you didn't know is that our father had signed controlling voting shares into my name. I can remove any officer today. I can close the redundant plant this afternoon. I can make public what happened to every buyer my brother whispered to. I have the votes to end his career before lunch, and no one here could stop me. The vested side leaned in. Patricia went white. Edith looked at me with grief, because she'd already done the math. I picked up the pen and set it back down. But I'm not going to do any of that. Daniel's head came up. He cracked first. Why? I walked you to a gate. I called you a beggar. You could end me right now. So why won't you? He couldn't comprehend a person choosing not to win. I said, because this isn't a weapon. That's the ruler. I told them, the plant stays open. All 120 jobs. No one loses their livelihood so I can win an argument. Daniel stays, but not running operations as he has been. Corner cutting stops. Canvas gets patted by hand. He's a good operator. He keeps a real seat under a board that measures by something other than how cheap we can make the inside of a coat. Then to the vested side. I'm taking the chairman's distribution and endowing a trust for apprenticeships. For masters like Edith to teach before the trade dies. This company was built by a needle, and somewhere along the way it decided the needle didn't count. Silence. Then a small broken sound. Edith. Glasses pressed to her mouth, crying the way people cry when they've braced for decades for the world to decide their hands don't count and it doesn't. Marcus. Jaw tight. Nodding. I hadn't destroyed anyone. I just told them their hands were worth as much as the names. Daniel stood. He came around the table, past the machinists, and stopped in front of me. He didn't apologize, he may never, but he said, Lena. My whole name. Like it weighed something. I don't understand you. I never did. I know. You were taught not to. He nodded, looked at the closed chest, almost said more. Then he took the seat I'd left him. The same as Edith. For the first time, my brother sat down among the hands. Afterward, Arthur said, Your father kept that coat you made, wore it till the end, told everyone some rude old tailor down south made it. I laughed. He'd worn my work over his heart, and told no one the most Whitfield love letter ever. I found Edith at her machine. I want you to run the trust. The apprenticeships. Building the next 40 years of people who know what your hands do. She stared. I'm 63. That's the point. There's a 19-year-old who ruined his first 10 seams and sat back down. He needs someone who remembers the old man. So do I. She took my hand. Calloused palm against calloused palm. Your father found the right one. She meant the right mender. The Malcolm Whitfield Trust for the Trades funded its first apprentices that spring. Edith runs it. Ferocious. The plant stayed open, retooled for hand-finish work. Customers can tell the difference. The whole trade. Daniel runs operations under the board. He's better now that he's not trying to win. We're not close, but he calls and uses my full name. Once he asked me, gruff, to teach Oliver a hand stitch. So I did. Oliver comes to my shop some Saturdays. He's not naturally good, his stitches wander, he ruins more than he finishes, but he sits back down every time. Last month he finished his first buttonhole. Ugly and lopsided, and his. Is it good? He asked. I turned it inside out. But then I did what my father couldn't. I looked at my nephew and said, It's yours. You made it with your own hands. That makes it worth more than any designer's name. He grinned. Somewhere, a ruler got shorter. As for me, I still sit at my machine. I have a workroom that smells of beeswax, and my father's shears on the bench. The difference is the room. It used to be where I hid. Now it knows who I am, and so do I. That was the only inheritance I got to keep. The willingness to see myself clearly. If you made it this far, you know what it costs to be underestimated, and what it costs not to become the people who did it to you. Lena kept the shop. She kept the workers. She kept herself. Tell me in the comments the one thing you refuse to let anyone take from you. And please subscribe to Tranquil Drama Stories. The next woman they underestimated is already waiting by her own gate.